Welcome back. Now, many of us, not all of us, but many of us, quietly or maybe out loud, wonder if something is wrong with us or if it's the world that we live in. Our next guest has challenged that idea in his new book, and it's called Am I Normal?
Well, let's get straight into it. Good morning to you, Dr. Alex George. It's great to have you with us. Congratulations on your new book. Are you normal? What is normal?
Well, I guess the news flash or the spoiler alert for the book is that I was diagnosed with ADHD, and therefore I guess in many ways maybe I'm not. As you just said, I think many people in their lives, regardless of neurodivergence, and ask themselves like, God, is it me? Like, what's going on? Like, you're having friction in your life in some kind of way, or you feel like you're out of place. And you go, is it me or is it the world? And so what I wanted to do is, almost through the lens that I was diagnosed with ADHD, I used chapter headings of like the kind of questions you get asked, like what was childhood like? What's your relationship with alcohol? Tell me about your love life, friendships, all these kind of aspects. To kind of question like how much is me and how much is the world? Because the important thing I've discovered, and I think it is important, is that sure, there are some things that you might not be normal in. The question is, does it cause you friction or not? If it doesn't, who cares? If it does cause problems, then that's something to address. But also society is, listen, there's so many things that we think is normal in society and we blame ourselves for that is not normal.
Like what?
For example, our relationship with grief. I lost my brother 5 years ago to suicide. I've spoken to you guys on the show about that before. And when he died, I had beautiful flowers sent and messages and cards. And then 2 weeks later, the funeral happened. And then there's an automatic silence that follows. No one kind of speaks or messages. And basically, what happens in this country is we are expected very quickly to get over grief. In fact, I think there's an unwritten rule of around 12 weeks that you have to start getting fully back and over it, if you like. And what happens then is we suppress grief. And let's be frank, every single person that's watching this show today, you on the sofa, we are all going to lose loved ones, if you haven't already, at some point. And when you lose someone you love, you're not going to suddenly wake up one day and think, oh, I'm not bothered, they're gone now. It's like an impossible goal to hope that, one day I'm going to wake up and not be bothered that my brother isn't here anymore. Instead, the goal is not to suppress grief and get over it, but learn to live with it. When you start doing that, you learn with their values, live with their memories. You allow yourself to have the ups and downs and the different feelings that you're going to have. You're going to have happy days and difficult days. All of a sudden, you stop doing the impossible and start doing the possible. And so many people end up sick, literally sick and unwell, because they try to suppress grief, like I did, drinking alcohol, for example, and working really hard just to not feel.
Working really hard, drinking alcohol, it is absolutely something that we see people just try to put things to the back of their mind and use other areas to do. Tell us how important giving up alcohol then was for you, and was that a difficult decision at the time?
Yeah, look, I was diagnosed with ADHD a couple of months before, and that diagnosis was the catalyst that changed kind of my life, because what I learned and how I understood myself, I realized, this dopamine deficit disorder, which is what ADHD is, that makes you chase highs and you feel you up and down, chasing highs and lows, is so happy when you pour alcohol into the system. So alcohol gives you lots of dopamine. That's why you see lots of people with ADHD ending up with alcohol addiction and issues with alcohol. When I stopped and I realized, oh my gosh, like this is a bad combination, I stopped drinking. I suddenly started facing the grief. I put in a lot of the changes that actually really matter. Most of the stuff that makes a difference with ADHD comes down to the changes you make in your own life, the lifestyle changes, the therapy, the understanding. That is what kind of triggers the rest. But quitting drinking was a huge thing for me. And just on the topic of ADHD, I think a lot of people say, well, listen, like everyone's diagnosed these days. Are we overdiagnosed? Is it that important? An important fact to know is that a woman with undiagnosed ADHD, on average, lives 8 years less, an 8 year shorter lifespan than someone who's neurotypical. And for a man, it's 6 years. If we provide the diagnosis to people who have it, who already have it, we're not making this stuff up, they have ADHD, we provide them with the tools, we can mitigate that shortening of life and also give them a much happier life.
Why do they live longer? Is it because they put steps in place that makes their life healthier, or what is it?
So if you think about it, so if you've got ADHD, you've got a dopamine deficit disorder, you're chasing the highs, you've got impulsivity, you've got lack of inhibition, you've got difficulties with emotional regulation, you're more likely to end up addicted to alcohol, you're more likely to lose your job, you're more likely to end up in financial troubles, you're less likely to be basically good at doing things to look after your health each day. All of those things add up to a big difference in your life expectancy. When we give people the tools and understanding and the frameworks, and I mean, there's lots of things that people can do beyond probably today's chat, but when you put into place that framework, the difference that it makes is huge. I've witnessed that in the last 3 or 4 years. My life and me as a person has completely changed. Now, of course, this book and what I've written is so much broader than neurodivergence. It's for anyone who's asked themselves that question, because whether you have ADHD or not, right, there are many things in your life that you are probably going to feel like you're having friction with the world with. And there's so many things I look at and just think like, well, alcohol is one of them. You're auto-enrolled into drinking. How many people at like a teenage years goes, yeah, I fancy having a drink. I'm going to, make a conscious choice of this. You kind of handed alcohol. I grew up in Wales in a rugby playing country, much like yourselves. And it was very much almost like a rite of passage. The school system, for example, how many people come out of the school system disillusioned, frustrated, they haven't come out with the skills they expected, they don't have the sense of resilience that they wanted, especially in this day and age. Why? It's because we have an outdated school system that doesn't serve people. And it's not the teachers, they're desperate to do a good job, they're absolutely desperate, and they're under so much pressure. But we have to evolve and learn. We've got AI, social media, all these things that are happening in the world. The school system is outdated, and we have to change these things. But it causes people so much suffering because they think it's them. They think they're the problem, but they're not.
You've brought up so many interesting points there that I'd love to do a deep dive on each, like the correlation between ADHD, OCD and addiction issues, life length. Like I didn't realise that an awful lot of people who could get addicted might be ADHD and how simple that would be. But you've mentioned there about the world and complex issues and people feeling their place in the world, that they're not normal and all this kind of stuff. Do you think that there is issues with increasing isolation in a world where we're meant to be more connected and that community, like what does that do to someone, a loss of community?
The point you just brought up is so important, actually, and is at the core of so many of the issues we face. So loneliness, so being lonely, so that's the lack of either quality or quantity of human connection with other people, is as bad for your health as smoking. So we know that smoking cigarettes is bad for us. So loneliness is just as bad for your health. And the opposite is true. Connection is incredibly empowering for life lengthening, for people forming good habits, for an enjoyable quality life, and a happy life. So what we're seeing now is people are spending huge amounts of time online. So the average 25-year-old spends 6 hours a day on social media and on their phones. Bearing in mind 8 hours to sleep, 8 hours at school or work, that leaves 8 hours left. So you've got 2 hours left over to do anything else. So what we're seeing is people are digitally connected, but in real life, we're seeing and spending less time with loved ones than ever. And that isn't normal. Like, I'm sat in a flat right now. It's me here in this box, right? If I sit here all day and I'm working on my laptop, I'm doing that most days and hardly seeing anyone, is there any surprise that you can end up sick? And that's normal. Let's be honest, it's not normal. I mean, that's not how the human being was developed to be. We're supposed to go to a cave and sleep at night and come out the day with our family, with our tribe, and go out into the world. We're not supposed to sit on our own in boxes. So if you're feeling lonely and you're struggling and you're isolated and you're feeling dejected and low, it might be because the world is telling you to live in boxes and be basically on your own most of the time.
So what's your message in all of this, Alex? Because you went and got an ADHD and OCD diagnosis. We know the mental health services in the UK, in Ireland, are not sufficient. People are on waiting lists for years to go and see a specialist. And we're talking about dentistry, that people can't even go see a dentist. Like, do people have to just almost diagnose themselves nowadays and try to put those steps into place themselves? Because realistically, we're not getting the help to do this.
You're right. And when I was listening to the segment on, waiting like 12 years or becoming an adult before your teeth are looked at is utterly ridiculous, isn't it? It's clearly not acceptable. And unfortunately, that's the story in the United Kingdom as well. And also the story with ADHD clinics, people waiting up to 8 years to be assessed. So people going from a child to an adult when we had an opportunity to help them, in this time. It's crazy. So what do people do? I mean, people are having to basically look and go, do I feel that it sounds that I have ADHD, and what things can I put into place now to try and help themselves? That shouldn't be the case. You need a diagnosis, you need to have the correct guidance, but ultimately people are doing that, and you can understand why. Please, if you're going to get advice, head to places like the ADHD Foundation, which has brilliant advice on kind of what to do next. But that's the fact of the matter. And also people are being pushed to go private. So basically, I was very fortunate I could afford a private assessment, but it's thousands of pounds sometimes. So it's at least, I think mine was 800, 900 pounds, right? So that varies across the UK. It's so expensive.
Yeah.
So what the message I have here with this book is much broader than neurodivergence, but it is about learning to understand yourself and finding out, like, who am I? Is it me or is it the world? And finding comfort in that. And then if you do feel that maybe something neurodivergence is something that you associate with or feel you might have, then please, despite the waiting list, do speak to a doctor, look at the system, because ultimately we need to put pressure on the politicians to fund these services. It's not acceptable as it is.
Yeah, and I know that this book is, whether you're neurotypical or neurodivergent, there's something there about what's going on in the world and the complex place that we find ourselves in. The book is called Am I Normal? Dr. Alex George, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
And I know at the start of each chapter as well, Alex, it asks questions that a doctor would ask you as well if you were to be getting an assessment of that. So very interesting. Well done to